As a person who is in the unenviable position of having lost a child to gun violence, there is a crossroads that I imagine you find yourself in that of either allowing anger and grief to overwhelm you or use those emotions to attempt to make the world better and have those emotions work for you and for the betterment of the world. Obviously, from everything that you've accomplished, you chose the latter. How were you able to show up like you did despite what you went through?
Welcome to The Incredible Messenger, a blend of real-world stories, expert insights, and proven strategies that keep our families, communities, and cities safe and healthy. Moving beyond rhetoric and politics to practical solutions and community safety, here's your host, Jonathan McMillan.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jonathan McMillan, the host of the Incredible Messenger podcast. Happy to be back. We have jumped right back into the thick of things. Have another dope guest coming on the show this week. This is a brother who I had the pleasure of meeting in person for the first time this year, but we've been connected for at least a couple of years through social media. If you're part of the CVI community, you know that there's a lot of people in the work, and we're spread all across the country. At this point, even globally, and it's also a tight knit network. But our next guest, we kept crossing paths in the social sphere, and at first it was one of those things where if I shared something, he would like it and reshare it and repost it, and I'm like, who is this brother? So I go to his stuff and see that he was posting some really cool stuff that was really in alignment with what I would say are best practices for what I understand and believe and advocate community violence intervention work to be, and then did a little bit of a deeper dive and learn more about him and his story. And then we just kind of connected and, dare I say, bonded. And we met for the first time in person this year at the Cities United annual convening. We were very intentional about connecting with one another and solidifying that bond. And I'm very glad that I did, because I got to know him even that much better. So at the convening at the conference, I said, Jamie, I gotta get you on the show. So with all that said, I've given you a lot of background. I want to introduce my next guest, Jamie Meekins from 3P, and beyond that, he's a father. He is a black man. He's like all of these things. Jamie Meekins, welcome to the Incredible Messenger podcast. Thank you for being here,
Thank
brother.
you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. I want to say that I am honored to be on your platform. Also, I just want to be real intentional about saying that even though there was a few obstacles with us getting to where we are now, that things happen exactly when they're supposed to happen. So I'm honored to be here in a space that God put us in at the right time.
I also truly believe that, it's one of those things when you work in community, especially as, say, you have your own 501c3, and you're really passionate about doing the work, and you maybe call a community meeting, or you start to put a coalition together, and you have this regular cadence of meetings, and there will be days that not everybody from the coalition shows up, right? You may have a coalition of 25, 30 people or organizations, and only 2 show up, or maybe 3 show up, right? At first, when I first got into that work, I would be very discouraged about that. And then a friend of mine, mentor of mine, brother of mine, Troy Grimes, he was on the show previously. He said, you know what? Who's supposed to be here is here. And when I started to look at it like through that lens of who, I recognize that sometimes those are the most powerful conversations, right? Those are the times when the distractions, the detractors, the haters aren't in the room and aren't derailing the conversation. And you actually kind of get some work done, and you start to move towards a shared vision that you're there for in the first place. Thank you for bringing that back. Like things happen as they should and when they should, and all of those things. Jamie, I just spoke about being a community and attempting to be a curator of spaces for community. A lot of people know my why and what I've done and all that, but they don't know yours. So I would love to begin this conversation with allowing the audience to learn more about who is Jamie Meekins, what is the work you do, why did you get into this work, and what is it that you're hoping to accomplish?
Thank you. Again, my name is Jamie Jalil Meekins. One of my mentors advised me to keep saying your name until the whole world knows it. I'm Philadelphia born and raised. Over the last 5 years, I've been really intentional about moving the CVI space in Philadelphia. I've been an advocate, community advocate for well over a decade now. We've done some amazing things in community. I'm a father who lost his 14-year-old son in 2018 to gun violence. As you probably already know, that had forever changed my life. I'm also a gunshot survivor myself. I think that losing my son to senseless gun violence was a direct result of me being intentional about ending gun violence as a public health crisis. I currently work with P3, Pushing Progress Philly, and we work with young men between the ages of 18 and 35 who are at the highest risk of gun violence. So mostly our people mostly our participants that's in our program, they're either victims of gun violence or perpetrators of it. It is a workforce development program, so we are intentional about preparing them and removing any obstacles out of their lives that may prevent them from getting employment in the near future. We also have our own organization called FAST, Families Achieving Success Together. That was an organization that was started by my grandmother, my father's mother. Initially, it was called Families Achieving Something Together. And when myself and my siblings decided to incorporate FAST as a 501c3, we changed the name to Families Achieving Success Together because we wanted to be intentional about the mission of FAST. Over the last year and a half, I've been building out the public safety side of Families Achieving Success Together. So we've been doing some remarkable things inside of the Germantown community. That's the area of Philadelphia in which I'm from. I was appointed 6 months back to be on the Philadelphia City Council's Special Committee on Gun Violence as a result of some of the work that we've been doing in the community. And that's very important because when you look at the dynamics of city council, a lot of the funding for community-based organizations comes from city council. So just them being intentional about preventing violence, gun violence in particular in our city, I think that's a very, very powerful thing. I think we have a progressive council president who heads that committee. And we also have a new mayor. Actually, this is her first year, Mayor Parker, who is the 100th mayor of Philadelphia, the sixth largest city in America. And she's also the first female mayor in the history Philadelphia. So she's been very intentional. I know that she doesn't get some of the national publicity like some other mayors, like in Baltimore and, Detroit and Newark and Chicago. But Philadelphia is on an almost 40-year low when it comes to gun homicides. So that's a clear indication of her being intentional about ending gun violence as a public health crisis. It's been 1 year since I graduated from the CVI LA, the Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy. I represent PX3, the third cohort for the academy out of the University of Chicago's Crime Lab. And University of Chicago is the #1 social science university in the world. And they're doing some amazing things. As a direct result of some of the work that we were doing, I was elected to Philadelphia's Citizens Police Commission oversight. I did decline for just I just wanted to be more intentional on some of the things that I was doing that was benefiting the work that I was doing. But full circle moment, how ironic it is that I get elected to the Philadelphia Citizens Police Oversight when just from 99 to 2003, I was actually on the run from law enforcement. So full circle
Mm.
moment. And it's just a testimony of, how things begin doesn't have to be how they end. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that last clarifying point. You said a lot, so we're going to unpack a lot of that. I, I I have to acknowledge and give you your props on even being cognizant and aware of the irony of being elected to that and being on the run for many years. The point that you landed on is not where we begin, is not where we have to end. That's especially resonating with me today. Today, December 20th, as we record this, is the 25th anniversary of the day that I walked out of Colorado Department of Corrections,
Wow.
December 20th, 2000. And it's been 25 years.
Mm,
I
that's
share
right. That's right. Own it. That's right.
those reflective. So bringing all that back around to, and I'm elevating this for anybody who's listening to the show right now, who might find themselves in a space of I just got out of prison, or they're in a space of I don't feel like I'm ever going to get anywhere because of my felonies on my record. I don't have the credentials of even a high school diploma, let alone a college degree. I want you to listen to this episode and these two men talking to you right now to let you know there's a space for you in this work. It's less about what you have done, it's more about what you're willing to do. And if you're willing to put in the work, show up, be humble, be courageous, own your space, or not compromise, but be willing to share power,
I love
then
that.
you can be a leader in this. You should be a leader in this space. I
No, I
so
love that.
appreciate you
Thank
sharing
you
all
for
that.
sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. We're reflections of each other.
Yes, very much so. And I think that's true, oftentimes true for the field, right? Where we mirror each other. We reflect what we see and what we want to be in each other. I want, as a person who is in the unenviable position of having lost a child to gun violence, there is a crossroads that I imagine you find yourself in that of either allowing anger and grief to overwhelm you, or use those emotions to attempt to make the world better and have those emotions work for you and for the betterment of the world that you reside in. Obviously, from everything that you've accomplished over the last several years, you chose the latter. How did that come about? How were you able to show up like you did despite what you went through?
That's a great question. One of the things that I leaned on heavily was my faith and belief as a Muslim, and that God doesn't make mistakes. I know we say that cliche-ish. God doesn't make mistakes, right? But when I really started believing that and diving into that the basic creed of a Muslim is to believe in Allah, is to create the good of it and what we perceive to be the bad of it, right? Inside of believing that, I started feeling relief. I have a great family. I have a loving circle of influence. I had people that poured into me, but none of that worked. None of that worked. It wasn't until I started believing that God doesn't make mistakes, and
Mm.
that the only reason why I'm feeling so sad, the only reason why I'm feeling so angry, the only reason why I wish I could go back in time and possibly, which I don't have the ability to do, but these are some of the thoughts that come in your head. If I'd have done this, if I'd have been a better parent in this aspect of my son's life, if I didn't allow a disconnect between myself and his mother, maybe the outcome would have been different, right? But I realized that the only reason why I was having those thoughts because God's infinite mercy and blessing upon me was to give me my son, my loving son, for 14 years. You know, the opposite of that grief was me being happy and me being blessed by God. It was He who gave me my son, right? The other part about it is that after I started feeling this relief, I started identifying the fact that I had the power, by God's permission and mercy, to turn my pain into passion. And one of the things that CVI gave me was structure and purpose. And it kind of coincided with my belief that there's no public safety except by way of the public. There's no community
Okay.
driven strategies except that you include community inside of these strategies. And I believe that the most impacted by gun violence are the people that need to be included into these strategies, into these methods to end gun violence as a public health crisis. It was aligned with my soul at the time. You know, people ask me, how did I choose this work? I said, no, the work actually chose me. It was
Mm-hmm.
aligned with my soul. I looked at the fact that I was affected by gun violence. I once read something that indicated that if you come from the neighborhoods that we come from, 100% of you guys will be affected by gun violence. 100%, not 99, not 80, not 70, 100% of the people that come from the environments that we come from will be affected by gun violence, whether directly or indirectly, right? So I looked at the people that were being hurt, family members, friends, mothers, fathers like myself, who were being affected by gun violence. And I knew how I felt. I knew how I felt, you know? I knew that before I started realizing the fact that this was God's decree, that there was a hole inside of me that would never be filled ever from the loss of my son. I looked at the people that were the most closest to me, John, were being affected by this public health crisis. I wanted to get inside of the fight, and I didn't want other people to feel that feeling ever again.
I have a great amount of respect for you choosing to process that loss and all of the other emotions that come with grief in a way. There's a great deal of admiration and respect for you in doing that.
Thank
I
you.
want to ask you a question, and I'll context the question like this. Um, when I was still doing outreach work, when I was still doing direct services, and I'm going to the halfway houses, I'm meeting with individuals who just got out, and they're trying to figure out their path forward, and they get connected to an outreach worker like me, and uh, and when you're doing outreach work, you're part therapist, you're
Many
part
hats.
Uber driver, you're part, sometimes you're a barber, right? Like you're a marriage counselor, like you're all these things, right? And you're effective, at least you hope that you're effective, because you have a shared experience with the person who you're working with, right? You come from the same background, you come from the same you like all the things that make you a credible messenger. And I will oftentimes get people say, well, I want to do what you do. I want to work with kids. That was the first thing they said. I want to work with kids. I want to tell kids, like, don't be like me. And I would tell them, that's dope. I need you. They need you to work on yourself first. They need you to begin a healing journey for yourself in all the things, all the hurt that you experienced that led you to enter into the lifestyle that got you to where you are. That healing needs to happen, or at least begin to happen. And they would look at me crazy. They would look at me sideways. Like, I'm going to be healed through the work. All I need to do is just get to start doing the work. I go back and forth with a lot of people on it. I give all that context to ask you the question, and forgive me if it's too personal of a question. I hope you know that I'm not asking you to put you on the spot. I'm asking you so that we all can learn. what has your healing journey looked like aside from the work in CVI?
Great question. It kind of goes back into my spirituality. I don't believe that you can be healed from the work. I think the work is triggering. And to your point, I believe that you have to begin to work on yourself. And one of the things that I was able to do was lean on my faith as a Muslim. I think we're in a spiritual war. If you look at some of the things that's going on in society, people going to the gravesite, urinating on graves of their ops, digging up the graves of their ops. This is the work of the devil. And if you believe that you're going to step in the ring and spar with the devil without God in your corner, then you'll never be healed. I don't believe in connecting with people by way of trauma. I like to say that I connect with people who have some similarities, right? I do believe that like souls connect. And I believe that it's essential that we connect on the things that we have in common, right? I believe in helping people or assisting people because they deserve your assistance if you're in this work. I believe assisting people according to who they want to be in life, right? I don't put my expectations on people. I have my own expectations sometimes on how I think people should be, but in reality, your expectations doesn't connect with the intentions of how someone wants to be. So I've learned through the work not to connect or create relationships, not just in the work, but in general, according to my expectations. I like to deal with people for who they are. If I decide to connect with that person, then I'll connect with that person. If I choose not to connect with that person, I leverage my power of choice and not connect with that person because they just don't align with me or what I'm trying to do. The healing process in that is that you'll start creating these authentic relationships. And inside of having authentic relationships, you'll start having access to people on levels you never thought that you can have it. I think
Mhm.
that's the secret to my work. I think that is the secret to everyone's work. If you're able to master that, creating that access to people, you can even use that in your personal relationships. People that you've known all your life. A mother should be this way, a father should be this way, a brother should be this way, an uncle, a sister should be this way, a spouse should be this way. No, you love a person for who they are and not for who they aren't.
Mm, 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 CVI work 101. You love a person for who they are. Wow. That was a jewel right there. Appreciate you on dropping that one. When you were introducing yourself, you spoke to how you have been at tables and elected or appointed to boards that have something to do with law enforcement as we work to redefine what public safety means for for America, but more specifically for Black communities and communities that are over policed, that are oppressed by traditional and historical law enforcement and bad actors within that. There's a tendency to say we don't rock with them. Law enforcement even being in the room sometimes can be a non-starter for any kind of conversation and any type of public safety plan moving forward. And from my observations, it seems that you have been very intentional about rewriting that narrative and building, negotiating, and navigating those relationships. I would love to hear, why do you do that and where do you see it going?
So I think when you look at the dynamics of public safety, I want people to understand that CVI practitioners, we co-produce public safety with law enforcement. I think one of the biggest examples I can use is our mayor's initiative, Mayor Parker. It's called PI, Prevention, Intervention, and Enforcement. But enforcement is the last piece of the pie. It's in the pie, but it's the last piece of the pie. I think that our mayor understood that our communities that are most impacted by gun violence should be included in the solution. Right? I don't think people were as intentional as she is when it came to that aspect of public safety. So that's important. That's the first part. The second part is she went out and got a police commissioner, Commissioner Bethel, who wasn't really all that interested in locking people up. particularly children, because he was at one time before being the commissioner, he was over all of the school police prior to being the commissioner. And he understood that how locking these children up was affecting them as adults. So what he started doing as police commissioner is creating diversionary programs that could possibly interrupt the root causes of violence so that some of these young folk won't be affected when they become adults. I think I think he's very much sensitive to the fact that there's no public safety without the public. I think that having people, now I'm not saying it's a perfect dynamic between grassroots organizations and law enforcement, but I think that we have something to build on and there is an infrastructure and it's starting at the top with city government. I do believe that we have ways to go before it's a complete, comprehensive ecosystem between law enforcement. But I think that we have to understand that in order for us to continue to transform our city, I'm talking about the transformation that we all want to see. Everybody has to be involved with eradicating gun violence as a public health crisis. It's law enforcement, their job is to whenever there's an ecosystem, you're putting everybody in their proper place. Law enforcement deals with what? Immediate danger, right? I don't have the ability to, even though I like to think sometimes I can put my cape on, tie it real tight, and jump in the middle and interrupt violence. But there are some times where I won't have the ability to do so in law enforcement. That's their space, right? But I think that CVI practitioners, our place in the ecosystem is to interrupt violence before it happens. The community-based organizations, their job is to make sure that the voices of the community are heard when it comes to violence prevention. So I think that whenever you want to create a comprehensive ecosystem dealing with public safety, everybody has to be involved. The financial institutions have to be involved. I'm a firm believer that if you are a business or entity in Philadelphia and you're not aiding and supporting the public safety space in Philadelphia, you shouldn't be allowed to do business here. Everyone has a social responsibility to end gun violence as a public health crisis. That's my opinion. If you want to do business in Philadelphia, right, especially these financial institutions, these banks, these foundations, people that have the ability to aid towards funding and resourcing this work, you have a social responsibility to help. Everybody has to be
It,
involved.
I think a lot of people agree with you. I would say most people agree with you. And this is probably less a question than even traditional, historically, governments have agreed, would agree with you in what you said. That if you're going to do business in this jurisdiction, whether it's a city, county, state, country, you have to be invested in public safety. But what that has traditionally meant is that
Law
you're backing
enforcement.
the blue. I mean, even as cliche as it sounds, but it's also a reality. We've seen those TV shows where the cop on the beat stops in the donut shop and doesn't have to pay for his coffee, right? Let that be anybody else. That's called extortion, right? And look, I know that's probably a controversial statement, but I'm a believer that if you're going to police my community, then you also need to be contributing and participating in my community in a way that doesn't just show up as a disciplinarian, as an authoritarian, right? Ah,
You're spot on. One of the things we did was we did an initiative where we took some of our participants. We created a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and it was a huge success.
mhm.
Where we took some of the young men that were contracted to help. All right. We did a 3-on-3 tournament. And we got one of the things we wanted to be intentional about was creating better relationships between the people that were serving in law enforcement. So we had 3 police districts put 3 teams in a tournament. We had the sheriff's department put a team in the tournament. In my neighborhood where I'm from, we got some of the guys right off the corner. They put 2 teams in. And the first game was between, some of the guys in my neighborhood in the 35th district, and that's the district that patrols our neighborhood, right? So we were intentional about trying to, um, create better relationships between community and law enforcement. And a lot of the community that we had in that tournament were at the highest risk of gun violence. We had one kid. He was shot, 5 times on 2 occasions in the same month. One of those times was in front of his mother's home. I mean, he didn't participate, but he was there, and just a
Mhm.
mere fact that he decided to come up and participate and make his presence felt, I thought that was powerful. I do believe that when you looked at 20, 30 years ago, when you asked someone what they wanted to do, they would say a cop, a doctor, or a fireman. And it was because police, they used to walk the beat. It was because police was from communities, some of the communities that they were patrolling in, right? People have relationships, you know. My brother was a cop, my sister was a cop. You will hear those type of stories. Now, I come from a family of law enforcement, so they were embedded inside of the community. And I think that the system has failed on that relationship between law enforcement and community because they started placing people in community that wasn't culturally competent. That was the first stage of disconnect,
That part, culturally competent, culturally competent. Boy, that's such a strong statement across the board. And I would love to dig into that even a little bit more as we talk about, well, as we stay here and talking about the CVI ecosystem, right? We spent a fair amount of time, I think, talking about law enforcement's role in the ecosystem, in a CVI and a comprehensive public safety ecosystem. There are other people, other sectors and stakeholders that also are, at least should be, a part of the ecosystem with intentionality.
hmm
Who else is a part of the P3 ecosystem and the work that you're doing out there?
Yeah, so we use religious organizations. One of the organizations that we connect with is the Germantown Mosque, right? And the imam there, Imam Hassan Sumali, he has one of the biggest influences in Philadelphia. And as a direct result of some of the religious outreach we've been doing in our city, we probably have the largest African American Islamic population in the United States in Philadelphia. And I know people like to say Dearborn, Michigan has the most populated Muslims, but we have the largest African American population, Islamic population in the United States. And a lot of it comes from history, and a lot of it comes from just a lot of the religious outreach that we've been doing. So just to give you an example of some of the religious outreach we've been doing, last Ramadan, we've recorded over 300 people accepting Islam in the holy month of Ramadan. So a lot of what we've been able to do in the Germantown area by way of the Germantown Mosque is clean up a lot of the baggage that was going on Germantown Avenue. So we're actually directly on Germantown Avenue. So from Germantown and Logan all the way up to Germantown and Worcester, there's no violence, right? And this was a corridor where we bought a few properties on the corridor because someone actually got killed in front of the Chinese store that we bought. We actually bought the Chinese store because it was a haven for people hanging out. And it was a haven for violence and gun violence. And we wound up buying the building. And the realtor, knowing how much we wanted that building, they even, marked it up a bit. But we knew what it meant to us. And when you know the value of something, money is never an issue. And we knew that our intention was to buy property to be in control of the environment and make it better. So a lot of what we've done comes from religious outreach. We might have spent $5 million in the last 6 or 7 years just developing property in our area.
I love that you highlighted, right, the role that the faith community plays and the faith sector plays in the ecosystem, specifically the Muslim Brotherhood and Sisterhood, respectfully, and the role of literally buying back the block. Right, it got my mind going here. Like my gears
Well, let
man,
me
this
share
man is
this
so
with you.
fast. Right,
So let me
yeah, go
share
ahead.
this. There's an area. It's called Wayne Junction. It's a It's a corridor where it connects to the highway, it connects to public transportation. There's a corridor, a business corridor, Wayne Junction. So Wayne Junction splits is the split between Nicetown and Germantown. So Germantown, we're doing that with the mosque, but if you go the opposite way of Nicetown, you have an organization called Nice Town CDC. Now, Nice Town CDC is a partner of P3. So P3 is made of three organizations. Nice Town CDC is one of them. Nice Town CDC has actually spent over $100 million or close to it developing real estate in the Nicetown area. Nicetown was one of the worst places who had the most gun violence in the city of Philadelphia. And we haven't done the statistics on it, but I'm sure that them addressing some of or a lot of the housing insecurities for people has brought some of the violence down. Nicetown City, they started developing property 15 years ago, affordable housing. There was a park, Nicetown Park, that didn't have any lighting, had abandoned cars, and it was just all types of stuff going on in this park. And they put lights there. Right now, they're revitalizing the park. Again, this is the second time they're adding on to it. There's a bridge of a major highway. They got permission from, they're in partnership with here. I think it's zoned for 4 NBA-sized basketball courts. This is all for the community. This is not an area that's been gentrified. This is one of the places in the northwest section of Philadelphia. We're one of the least gentrified areas in Philadelphia because we have the most second and third and fourth generation homeowners that's holding
Mm-hmm.
on to their property. So we're the least one of the least gentrified areas in Philadelphia. And we're putting a sports court under this major highway, 4 NBA basketball courts, pickleball court, half soccer field, skateboard area for skateboarders and bikers. This is going on in an urban community that was in a space of one of the most concentrated areas for gun violence in Nice Town
Mm-hmm.
CDC over the last 15 years. They've been in action for 25 years, but they've been developing for the last 15 years. And they're changing the area. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be highlighted. And then they ventured off into violence prevention. As a direct result of their development, they understood that you have to have other components to eradicate violence in that area. So they got into the violence prevention space as well.
I mean, what you're describing is blueprint that most community leaders and residents would support if they knew about it, and if the narrative about public safety is more cops equals more safety, not more investment in the community equals more safety, more investment in recreational and public needs equals more safety, more investment in opportunity equals public safety. I'm so happy
That's
to hear you describe this model.
when people say we need more police to make the city safer. Yeah, we do need police. Has a law enforcement has its space, right, and in the ecosystem, the public safety space, right. But it's kind of like people make this. It's kind of like this. It reminds me of the same argument of these gun advocates would, and I don't have anything. If you can legally carry a gun, I think you should carry it, right? But I do think that we don't need more guns, right? I do think America is the most armed country in the world.
By
But would
leaps
you
and
argue it's the
bounds.
most safest? Just because it's the most armed doesn't mean it's the most safest, right? And likewise, man, I don't think that we need more police or we need more prisons to make Philadelphia more safer. I think we need more investment in the things that are working. I think that CVI is working because it's a solution by the community for the community. You have to involve community into these solutions, right? But I also believe that in order to get the matter resolved, so we can make Philadelphia, and this is the mayor's initiative, to make Philly the cleanest, greenest, safest city in the United States. I think everybody has to realize that we all play a part in making city cleaner, greener, and safer.
You just raised a point that the irony around, like you said, there are more guns in firearms in America, and I nobody, very few people would say that this is the safest country in the world. The same logic goes for if you just look at any major metropolitan city in America, the suburbs do not have the same number of law enforcement patrolling the streets or have a high rate of police presence, but their crime rates are lower. Now, there's a couple of ways of looking at that. I'm just saying there's a couple of ways of looking at that. I mean, a crime rate only goes as high as people are reporting crimes, right? So that's not to say that crime is not present in those
Event, yeah,
communities, or that's not to say that those crimes are being prosecuted at the same rate as in other communities. Or there's another way of looking at it and saying that more law enforcement does not equate to safer communities, because we have high rates of not high rates. Is a high presence of law enforcement in spaces where they're experiencing high rates of violent crime. So
absolutely. They're
anyway,
concentrated in those areas.
concentrated. So and Jamie, there's a couple of questions I want to ask before we wrap up. This conversation has been from the beginning, and I think that's a reflection of who you are. And so I know it can be really easy to let the work come home with you. It's really easy to let the work define who you are. It's really easy to find yourself getting lost in the work, and then once you find yourself, you're so deep in the work that it's very hard to separate the work from everything else that you are. So, in the spirit of like honoring all of you, and recognizing the entire human experience, I'd love to know more about, like, how do you unplug? How do you unwind? Who are you when you're not active in those roles?
I am a loving husband, a proud father. I think one of the other secrets to my disconnecting from the work and not bringing it home is I have a loving wife who supportive of the work, but she also helped me craft out non-negotiables when it comes to family. And those non-negotiables when I because I'm a habitual line crosser, so sometimes I may forget those non-negotiables or ignore them, and she tends to remind me about them, right? And me having integrity with our relationships and having integrity with our non-negotiables, I fall in line. During COVID, I picked up a hobby, cycling. I invested, I don't even want to tell you the amount of money that I invested, but I have this very, very expensive bike that I need to, you know, uh, get back on when the weather permits. But cycling is something that I fell in love with. I look at these small pockets of peace, I like to call them, I go out to lunch sometime by myself and I just unwind, man. I don't take any calls. I don't get on the phone. I just sit there and just be in the moment, man. So I have these small pockets of peace cycling, making sure that I'm intentional about my non-negotiables and cycling, man. And I'm also a very spiritual person. So I have my religious family as well. And I make sure
Mm.
that I'm staying on top of those obligations as well, because ultimately that's what's going to get me to the next level.
When you step into this work, it's so complex. You have to have boundaries. And I love the word non-negotiables, but it's really difficult to compartmentalize who you are and what you do and how you show up, because it's all of a person.
Yeah.
I have often said, especially when I was working in government, when I clock out at night, I'm going back to the same community that I'm working to save, right?
100%.
They don't look at me as, oh, you're off the clock, right? The community coalition still needs someone to pick up the food to make sure that everybody eats, right? Am I doing that with this hat on or that hat on? No, I'm doing it with both hats on. So yeah, I appreciate that, brother. After
Okay.
convening.
I felt some synergy.
So as we talk about the non-negotiables, the boundaries that you have so that you can honor and respect the other aspects of your life. I love the fact that you elevated the role your wife plays in helping you be whole. What does success look like for you? What is it that in result, end goal, a benchmark look like for you so that you can eventually one day step back and pour as much into the other aspects of your life that you do in the CVI work in community leadership. And then what does that look like? Right? Once you have hung up your hat or you're stepping away, what does life look like for you after this is not the entirety or a majority of the work and what you do?
So success, it looks like my city or my state or the country no longer needing my services. I think that when there's no longer a need for a Jamie Jalil Meekins in this space, I can transition to other aspects of community, other aspects of things that are benefiting not only myself, my family, but community as a whole. I look at success as people not needing me in this space no longer, living in a life where you know, people are respecting people, mutual brotherly and sisterly love. People mindsets are changing because I tell people all the time, even though crime is down, the mindsets are still the same. So when the mindsets are still the same, it can kick off at any time, right? Because people are still in that space of wanting to be the biggest dandada, as they say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what if we able to create a culture where we can shift the mindset of our community to not only understand that we can enroll them into the possibility of having a safer, cleaner, greener city, but also a city where you are the cause of this being a safer, greener, cleaner city, right? When we're able
So
to
let
create
me
that
ask you though. I hear you, but I wonder. No, it's not. But I hear you, and I still wonder. Uh, like, what is the benchmark for that? Because honestly, Jamie, the world's always going to need you, right? And so I hear
well,
that
just
as
not
a
in the
person who cares for you, I want to raise the caution. Like, nah, dog, that can't be the finish line. When do you, I don't want to see you bruised up and banged up to the point where you can't walk no more, like the old NFL player who don't retire soon enough, right? No, we want you to enjoy your life after your career. So
yes.
what is it that you want to that you can say, okay, I have done my part.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my original answer. Just living in a city where gun violence is not a public health crisis. I mean, you're gonna have people die and killed to the end of time, but it doesn't have to be at alarming rates. I just want to be in a place where, like, I give you an example. When I went to Boston, when I visited Boston, guess what? I felt safe.
Mm.
Right when they told me when they told me Boston only had 25 gun related homicides, I believed it because I felt safe. My heart was at ease when I was in Boston. When I traveled to make my religious pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia, I felt safe. When they tell me it's no gun related homicides in Saudi Arabia, I could believe that because my heart testified to the fact that I felt safe. We need to enroll, we have to, we deserve to enroll our communities into a possibility of having hearts that feel safe and testify that everybody can feel safe in these neighborhoods. That's when the work is done. And we're creating that though. I know people, sometimes people can't fathom the fact that you can live in a neighborhood. I'm 49 years old. I remember when there wasn't no gun violence in my neighborhood. Like if somebody got shot in your neighborhood, Back in the day, it would be like, I lost a friend to gun violence when I was 15 years old. It shook the neighborhood. It shook the neighborhood. There was a guy in my neighborhood. They were playing around with the gun and the gun went off. He got shot and died. It shook it shook the foundation of the entire neighborhood from top side to bottom side because that wasn't
Yep.
a thing back in the day. Everybody knew. I live in a neighborhood. I barely know my neighbors.
Right.
That
Yeah.
wasn't a thing when I was a kid. The lady across the street, Miss Queenie, I remember her sending me to the store at the time when you could do this to get her a pack of cigarettes. I brought her the cigarettes back, and guess how much she gave me for going to the store? A
$5.
dime. No, a dime. 10 cents. We have to enroll people in the possibility of getting community back to that, where violence is not a thing, but mutual love and respect is the ultimate thing.
So we get to that point. What are you doing with your life then? What?
I'm hanging my boots up, man. I'm shifting to other areas where I may be needed at. Because the one thing that I love about my wife, and you mentioned that, one of the things that allows her to make me whole is to know she has to share me.
Mm,
You know, she has to share me,
okay. Okay.
right? And I think that, you know, me not having to be in this space will create room for something else, whatever that may be.
Man, that's a great way to wrap this up. I'm excited to see both that vision that you have and see what's next for you when we get there. I'm looking forward to being a part of the journey. Hey, Jamie, I call the show The Incredible Messenger with intention because the people who I asked to be on the show are credible messengers for the populations in which they work and are passionate about and can articulate and raise awareness for what they're doing. And so what I always like to do is to wrap a show up with having a guest share what is their message. What is a message that you want to get out to anybody who is listening to the show right now?
The message I want to leave everybody with is this: you have the ability to create whatever community you want to create. I think that sometimes we get caught up into thinking things are too big to create, but if you think it's unimaginable, right, then that means that you can do it. And that means you're thinking at the level that you need to be thinking to create that transformation that you want to see. When I look at community and I look at some of the things that's going on versus some of the things that we help happen, there was a time where we didn't think we could do it. But when we started enrolling the community and the possibility of changing it, sometimes it started as community cleanups, neighborhood basketball games, sponsoring the kids. Mr. Softy, I don't know if you guys got Mr. Softy, and that's the ice cream truck. Buying all the kids ice cream because that's what that's what we remember community used to be, right? And then it started, violence prevention, interrupting cycles of violence because we had that buy-in from community, right? It means people coming to me first before they go to law enforcement to interrupt a cycle of violence in our neighborhoods. I never thought that I would be the person that people would be calling because they have more trust in me than they do have in law enforcement to squash a beef. And I believe that everybody that's a part of a community has that superpower. You just have to tap into it.
Oh, I appreciate you, brother. Sure that you have said something in this episode, if not a lot of things, using your grandma's something there, like understanding the weight of something. I heard it when you first said it. I heard it when you said families achieving something. Just give me something. I am sure that the listeners heard something, if not a whole lot of things in this episode that made them want to say, I need to learn more about that something, that thing, that if nothing else, just learn more about you. So do me a favor, let people know how to contact you. And I know you got something coming up. If you want to share more information about that, please
Absolutely.
feel free.
Thank you. Yes. On Instagram, I'm GQ 24fit. On LinkedIn, I'm Jamie, Jaime. Meekins, Meekins. You can see a lot of the work that I'm doing there. If you want to know more about the work that we're doing, we're in the process of doing a public safety fireside chat. It's going to be fire, right? It's a chat and chew. So come get some finger foods. We have some powerful people, some people from the city and some people from outside of the city. Our goal is to make sure that local policy, is connecting with the work that we're doing. We have a organizing and advocacy panel. And on that panel, we have every level of government. We have our brother, Greg Jackson, who worked in the White House. He was the deputy director for the inaugural Office of Violence Prevention in the White House under the Biden-Harris administration. He'll be there. We have a state rep, Anthony Bellman, who is chair of the PA Safe Caucus. We have two council people, Councilwoman Bass, who actually funded this event. So our FAST organization is doing this fireside chat in conjunction with the office of Councilwoman Cindy Bass. And we also have Councilman Jeffrey Young Jr., who both of those council people are also on the City Council Special Committee for Gun Violence, along with myself. So that's going to be important. And we also have the amazing Jocelyn Fontaine, Executive Director for the Black and Brown Collective. We need the researcher. And we also have, last but not least, on that panel, we're going to have my man, Dewan Zoe Kennedy, who put this work on his back. He's, amongst a few other people, put this work on his back and sued the Trump administration for the grants and some of the funding that they took back that was allocated for grassroots organizations. And we also have a CVI panel, February 15th, 3 to 6 in Philadelphia. It's going to be powerful. We're going to have people from all over the country coming. It's going to be a powerful event. I think it's probably going to be the single most important public safety event in the new year for Philadelphia in the first quarter.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I'm going to do everything I can to get there. This is dope that you're doing it. Again, I am very, very grateful to have been able to connect with you, and then even more so to have this conversation with you. For me, not only to be able to learn more about you, but then to also be able to share who you are and the work you do and your why with so many, because I think people are going to be inspired and they're going to be educated about how they can move in their jurisdictions and what the work could look like where they are if they're feeling stuck. I appreciate you. So y'all, this is another dope episode of the Incredible Messenger podcast. As you see, I always attempt to bring people who have something to offer, not just you, but me as well. I tend to leave these conversations feeling very enlightened and edified. So I hope that if you have made it to this part of the show, we share something in common. We both found a lot of value in the conversation. If that is the case, what I'm asking you to do is please share the show with your network. Let people know about it. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on YouTube. There's the webpage. You can go to any one of those, Instagram, any of those platforms. Share the show with your network. What was your favorite part of the conversation? Was there an idea that got you thinking, wow, that's something I hadn't considered? Was there something you disagree with? Feel free to leave your remarks in the comment and we can have a conversation. That is what we're looking to build a community around, not just the guests that I have, but around the CVI work and gun violence prevention in general. This is your opportunity. This is your platform as well. Rate us on Apple, rate us on Spotify, all those things. And when it's all said and done, take care of yourself. Be blessed. I'm out. Peace. Give me about one more minute. I'm going to end the recording session here. Oops. It needs about a minute to upload. Wait, there we go.